Welcome to the Wake Up Protocol. I am your host, Nadja Haldimann, and together we're having life-changing conversations with real people about spiritual awakening and the transformations that follow. We're mapping the messy path of awakening so you can go further faster and feel a little less alone along the way. For this episode of the Wake Up Protocol, I'm joined by Lee Kindell, founder of MOTO Pizza, entrepreneur, visionary, and one of the most heart-centered humans I know. Lee's story is wild. While most restaurants were shutting down during the pandemic, he started one, and not just any restaurant. MOTO Pizza grew from a single pop-up into a thriving movement of Detroit-style pizza, community, and kindness, all built around a 120-year-old sourdough starter named Betty. But this isn't just a story about pizza. It's a conversation about awakening through purpose, resilience, and kindness. Lee shares how running a hostel, facing uncertainty, and exploring consciousness through ayahuasca all shapes the way he leads, with humor, humility, and heart. We talk about joy, service, and what it really means to bring light into everyday life, one act of kindness, one meal, one moment at a time. I hope you feel the magic of this one. It's definitely landed for me.
I think there is a thread of truth through all religion. There is a thread of truth through all science. There is a thread of truth through all philosophy. And I think each one of us find all of our paths, which are very individualistic, through tying these different strings of truth together, which creates a very unique experience to each individual as we move through it. I really believe more than anything, just that form of self-love is the greatest love that you can express.
Lee Kindell, welcome to the Wake Up Protocol.
Nadja, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now. You have always been such an inspiring person to me, ever since I first met you through a common friend. And just watching what you did in your evolution during the pandemic was incredible. While most people's restaurants ended up shutting down, you started a pizza restaurant, Detroit-style pizza restaurant that was booming during the pandemic. And now you turn it into a multi-location restaurant. And it's just incredible to watch your journey.
It's a crazy story, and I'm really excited to get into this conversation with you. We've known each other for years now, and, I've been listening to your podcast, and I absolutely love them. So I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah. So to start off, I'm curious, what is your life like right now?
It's pretty insane. We have so much going on with the business, and that's mostly what it is all business. By the end of this year, we'll have 11 locations. We're in 2 stadiums, and I'm doing a deal right now to be in multiple stadiums. And we're looking at a deal in Asia. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. So a lot happening.
Wow, so much from this one starting point in the middle of the pandemic, and you expanded it to so much.
Yeah, we just hit 4 years too. So it's been a wild ride, I got to tell you.
Yeah. So what got you started to take that leap and get going with a restaurant while everybody else was shutting down?
That's a multi-layered question, and it ties in a lot with the conversation we're about to get into deep, right? So my wife and I, we started a hostel together as business partners, and it turned into a 3-chain hostel. We hosted about 60,000 kids a year at our peak. Wow. For over 15 years. And then when COVID hit, one of the things we did at our hostels that made us well received around the world was we built it around the community of dinner. And so we would gather food together. I would take kids crabbing. I would take them fishing or foraging. And we would come back with all the ingredients that we would cook dinners together. And there would be like over 60, on average, 60 to 80 of us sitting down having dinner, right? And so it was kind of crazy in the conversations we had. And I would often ask questions that were very deep questions for travelers. And it was a really great way to build community. And during that time, I would often make pizza. And over the years, I would tell my wife, you know what, when I retire, I'm going to make pizza. And of course, when COVID hit, we lost everything. And I said, I am going to just do a quick pivot and I'm going to make pizza.
Wow, what an incredible story. You just decided to just on the spot pivot because you needed to figure out one other way to continue making a living. And here you are. And once again, being very successful at it. And I just see your positive attitude in all of this. Wherever you are, there is just this positive energy surrounding you, and people are attracted to you like the moth to the light. And yeah, what is it that happened in your life that made you such a openly light person that is attracting positivity and spreading it too in the world?
That's such a good question and such a deep question because we all have our personal journey and none of us escaped our youth unscathed. We all have things of our youth that hold us back or get in our way or that are programmed. And, I had a very tough childhood. And it's really interesting how I found a positive way to approach that. And as I grew into who I am, I realized my mother's very positive. She basically raised us. My father was in the Navy and he was gone all the time. She's Filipino. She came here to this country barely speaking the language. And my dad was out to sea often, right? And we struggled, but she kept such a positive attitude. And it was very playful. We would walk for miles just to go to a lake because we had no transportation. And we couldn't afford public transport. So we would walk for miles with my mother. And it would just be a big game. And my brothers and my sisters were really tight and were very playful. And it came from that struggle and that hardship, right? And that really stuck with me through my adulthood. And then as I began to grow spiritually, I realized how powerful of an asset that is. Mm-hmm. And it gets stronger every day as I get older.
Wow. Yeah, that's so powerful to hear that because oftentimes we need that contrast to really realize what we have. And then from that place, we can start growing and stepping into something bigger. Sometimes when we have everything, we can become complacent, entitled, and not really appreciate what we have. So yeah, really finding that positivity and the simplicity. What I also really hear from you is community, because even when you guys had to walk for miles, you had each other. And when you did the hostel thing with your wife, you guys had dinners with the entire community of travelers and giving them a sense of home and togetherness. And that's something that I feel is really missing. We're having a loneliness crisis in this country where people are feeling separated, alone, depressed, anxious, and bringing people together. And of course, food. I took a permaculture design course a few years back. And the reason why there's so much food in there is because it's about creating community. And community often happens around food. So how did you figure out that food is such a glue to build that community?
Again, that came up in my childhood. We didn't have much. We couldn't afford to really go anywhere and experience Disneyland and those kind of things. And so dinner was our community place. It's where we came together as a family and we shared food. We didn't have a lot of it. We fought over food. But I've always had this really powerful love of food. And I always thought it is a big part of who I am. And when we started the hostels, it was kind of a natural thing to just share time around food to get to know each other. It's a wonderful way to begin conversation. And what we learned was, like you said, the world is literally starved of connection. Mm-hmm. And these kids, what I learned was they travel the world looking for connection. Mm-hmm. And that was really interesting to me because they really opened up. Food unlocked this need for connection with them. And I don't even think most of the time they thought they were looking for adventure, but I really believe they were looking for connection. And when they found it with us, because we were able to unlock it through food and connecting, it really opened them up. So we had some very, very deep conversations and deep relationships because of that. As a matter of fact, yesterday, one of our actual employees that were with us from 14 years ago made it a point to bring his partner by and to come visit us after 14 years.
Oh, wow.
And just to say how his time with us, how impactful that was and how it really guided his journey. And I think that's a really powerful thing. We have kids that still write us today after almost 20 years. It's remarkable. That connection that you can create is really, really powerful.
What a blessing that you were able to help these people receive that. I just recently interviewed somebody here on this podcast, and his story was about travel. He traveled to a different country and met up different people, ended up reading a spiritual book, had conversation around that. And that was really the first step in his awakening. So I'm sure you had a big impact on many people in that way, just by facilitating that. That's really beautiful.
And it was also what I didn't realize was the impact it had on me. Like watching all of these people, it was like, you know how they say when you teach is when you learn your greatest lessons? Absolutely. And it was kind of like that, right? So there was a reflection that happened on me that struck me in a way that was totally unexpected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I've experienced it myself with the teaching. The moment you teach something, you really learn it, you embody it, you will not forget. Yeah, that's really, really powerful. So when you think back on the time when you started your pizza restaurant, did you have any kind of ideas on how that would turn into also a way to build community?
I was very clear on what that would do from my previous experience. So I knew how powerful food was in creating community. And my wife and business partner, we are a very powerful combination. She worked the front window and remembered everybody's name that came through there. And they felt very special because of that connection and community that we created right out of the gates. We have this really cute couple that came in. They were dating on the first week we were open. They ordered a pepperoni pizza. They've been ordering a pepperoni pizza every Wednesday for the last 4 years. And when they got married a couple years ago, they wanted MOTO Pizza at their wedding. And, we couldn't be there because we were working the shop at the time, but at least they got their MOTO Pizza. And that's what I'm talking about, the power of community and really like how it embeds itself in people's lives in a very deep way.
Yeah. Just seeing how people went absolutely crazy around that pizza when it first came out. And I remember you guys sold out on a regular basis during the pandemic. Yeah,
it was crazy. There was actually a 3-month wait for our pizza at one point. And that 3-month wait was really interesting because people were like, oh, it's a scam. It's like, no, we just had such demand. It's a city of 2 million people, all of greater Seattle. And a lot of people wanted it. And it was just me and Nancy. So it's hard to cover those kind of numbers.
Yeah. Interesting. So I'm curious about the spiritual part of you because I've known you for a while and you're definitely a deeply spiritual person. What was the beginning of you turning more towards spirituality?
That I can pinpoint to one exact night. And that was when there was an evening where I woke up in the middle of the night and I realized that I was floating above myself. And I've never had a dream like this. I'm a blue-collar kid. I grew up as a laborer. My parents had a little bit of religious background, but I didn't go to church. I was pretty average. And this dream was like nothing I've ever had before. And so when I'm laying there floating above myself, I look over at my wife and I realize I was maybe 3 feet off the ground. And I wasn't shocked or surprised. I was very calm, which was unusual. And once I realized I was floating, then I continued to float. And to make a long story short, I pretty much started to shoot up at a speed that was unbelievable, where I saw where we lived, and then I saw the city that we lived in, and gathering height, I saw the state of Washington, the Puget Sound, higher, into the clouds, looking down at the city, the state, then the country, then the continent, then the world. And I was like, whoa, this is happening really fast. And then when I kind of looked down at myself, I was this amazing kind of blue colored light, like a light colored blue light, like a bluish silver almost. And I realized I had a umbilical cord that went all the way. And I'm like, oh, I'm good because I'm attached to myself. And it was that calm that I thought that, like, I'm not gonna lose myself because I just calmly said, oh, I'm attached to myself. I'm not going anywhere. And, the speed of that picked up. Then I was like, I saw the planets, a solar system, and then nebulas, like the most beautiful nebulas. I mean, I was enjoying the trip. Like, it was like, just like you would go for a ride through the countryside and just see beautiful landscape. I was that calm about it, just going like, oh, beautiful landscapes. Oh, beautiful nebula. Oh, beautiful star cluster, those kind of things. And then I went through a tunnel. And this tunnel was exactly what people talk about when they die. So it was like a tunnel with the sound of air, but I didn't feel the air. It was like a rushing sound, like that, going at very fast speed. And I popped out into this geometric pattern universe. And I'm like, this is weird. And all the geometric patterns were this beautiful blue lights. And then I looked in front of me and there's a giant lotus, a blue light lotus. And this lotus bloomed open. And then a figure started coming out of it. And as that figure came out, I freaked out and boom, and a faster speed than I could think of, I was back in my body again, like everything in reverse, but faster. And so this dream really shook me to my core. And I called one of my friends up who her paintings were very similar in that way, the geometric pattern. I call her and I'm like, tell me about your art. Like, how did that come about? And she's like, oh, when my mother passed away, I was devastated and I couldn't sleep. And I ended up in a car wreck because I fell asleep at the wheel and I was clinically dead for a minute. And I was brought back to life by the paramedics. And I'm like, just tripping. I'm like, did I just die in my sleep? So I started doing all this research and I'm trying to understand the near-death experiences. And then through that research, I found the out-of-body experience, or OBE. And I'm like, okay, I think that's what I had because I feel fine. I don't think I need to go to a doctor or anything like that. And so I just assumed that it was an out-of-body experience that I had in a dream state. And then I started researching, okay, why do we have these out-of-body experiences? Because what I had was very similar to what many people had. So there's got to be something to it. And of course, my friend who passed away for a moment, I'm like, those stories are very similar. So there's got to be something that ties it together. And then to put it in a nutshell, I discovered that our brains produce the DMT, and that DMT is that spike in DMT is what gives us that dream state or out-of-body experience. That's the very simple explanation, right? But I started exploring DMT and what that was about. And then that's when I discovered ayahuasca. And then I went on a search about ayahuasca and found a calling to try ayahuasca, which I did. I mean, the story's longer than this, but I'm keeping it really short for you. But it's a pretty interesting story.
Oh, feel free to go as deep as you want. I'm really curious about it.
Okay. So when I discovered DMT, the idea of DMT and what it is and how it affects our brains, and that we actually have the neurotransmitters, receptors that are like specifically built to completely interlock with that, which is amazing in itself, that our bodies will naturally bind to it. That was fascinating to me on a science level. And then when I discovered that there's these ayahuasca ceremonies that are very religious ceremonies that come from South America, I was like, okay, I need to get to South America. I couldn't get to South America for different circumstances. And I'm searching for it in Mexico. And I found a couple in Mexico, but it was very difficult. And then, I'm like, it's got to be around somewhere. Turns out a friend of mine who is an artist, because we were very involved in the art scene, she is from Mexico, but she's also a practicing shaman. And I just reached out on my Facebook. I'm like, does anybody know anything about ayahuasca or where I can do it here in North America? And she said back to me, she goes, oh yeah, Lee, and I've known her for like a decade, and I never knew this. And she's like, yeah, I can take you through a ceremony. And I'm like, what? I was completely shocked. So I'm looking through North America to do this. And it turns out that she was trained in South America in the Amazon, and she's based out of Mexico. And she's like, we could do it right there in your city. So she came to Seattle, and we had a ceremony. And that's when my spiritual journey really began. But it absolutely was sparked by the dream.
Wow, what an incredible story. You had this out-of-body experience in a dream and, in a sense, got into that DMT world and then did more research and got curious about what this is like, and then ended up finding this ayahuasca shaman who was able to lead you through that. So I'm curious, when you actually had that experience with that shaman, did you have a similar experience or was that different?
Oh, so I was so moved by the experience. And yes, I had a very deep experience, a very powerful experience. And I was like, wow, this medicine needs to be shared with the world. And which is kind of typical of your first time experiencing ayahuasca, right? You want the whole planet to heal and to go through what you've gone through. And I felt very strong about that. And I ended up facilitating her coming up here and facilitating 30 ceremonies I've participated in.
Oh, wow.
So I had more than my share of ayahuasca journeys in just wanting to share it with the world. I'm in a much different place now where I like the idea of people discovering it on their own versus me being a proponent of it and speaking out on it. I speak of this story to explain my story, but yeah, those 30 ayahuasca ceremonies were very, very powerful. And I'd like to say it cleaned out a lot of trash within myself. There's a lot of, I say trash or garbage as in things that were very unuseful that I held on to.
It sounds really powerful what you're explaining, how this medicine helped you clear out that trash that no longer was necessary to be part of you, and then left you with a upgraded version of yourself, or maybe a cleaner. Maybe it's like cleaning out the hard drive on your computer or reformatting it or something like that. That's kind of what I'm hearing as you're explaining that.
Absolutely.
What kind of downloads did you get that had an impact on the version that you are today?
Yeah, there was a lot. But I think as the process continued through this story to where I am today from the beginning, what I've really boiled it down to and what I've learned is that we are all part of this one source, and that all of the answers that you need as an individual are not outside of you, they're inside of you. And my journey has become very personal because now I understand when some of our great teachers say, if you want to change the world, go within and change yourself. I really understand that now, because when you change your perception of the world, you are changing the world. When you change your perception of yourself, you are changing the world. And so my spiritual journey became a very inward focus, and it still is today. And what I've learned from that too is my impact through this whole thing. I've always wanted, and I feel like I've been called to be of service to others. And as I learned to define that, I've learned that it's through the expression of who I am is how I inspire others to their highest self and to their own exploration and to look within who they are. And I do that through the language that I speak, through the lessons that I learn, through the actions that I take. My wife often says, I don't need to hear it from you. I need to see it through action. And I think that's really powerful to express yourself fully through who you are and the actions that you do, not what you say. And I'm very imperfect. I have a lot of faults, but I find in my imperfection a joy. And that's where a lot of people wonder where this comes from. The joy comes from knowing that we are always imperfect. It's because we're fragmented. We're not our whole because we're separated from source. And that is perfectly okay, because that's part of the journey. And that's part of the lesson, is to learn that as a fragmented piece of the universe, to be simply put. And so knowing that gives me comfort that I'll be going home and then knowing everything. And, now I understand why the Buddha laughs, because there's joy in all of this imperfection, and there's perfection in the imperfection.
The cosmic humor of it all.
Oh my God, that is exactly it. I have spent many hours in the early mornings by myself with my dough, and I found myself laughing out loud by myself, going within, and it was very meditative when you're rolling dough. And I found myself laughing, and that's when I really learned that the universe has a great sense of humor. And humor is a form of love. And that, when you can tap into that, it's amazing what the universe does for you.
Yeah, and I see that in you every time I see you. You have that sense of humor and embody that love as well when, you just kind of shine that from your being. If you had to describe to people what spiritual awakening is, what words would you use for that?
Oh my gosh. I have been working on that answer for a while, so I can actually boil it down from my perspective.
All right.
And I believe that spiritual awakening is simply this: learning how to express yourself in the fullest possible way. To me, it's that simple. This is going to sound really cheesy, but it's the only analogy I can come up with. A flower that blooms in the morning, right? There is something that is so simple about that, but it's such an emotional thing to watch and to appreciate. And I think it's the same thing when you watch a human being find their full bloom and that full expression. And there's not a lot of human beings that can really hold on to that truth of who they are, because there's so much in the way. And when you can remove all of that and express who you truly are, I think that's where you find true awakening. And so to me, spiritual awakening is just a simple, full expression of yourself.
It sounds so easy, and yet it's so hard to do.
Yeah, that's the humor of the universe.
Yeah, it makes me kind of laugh just thinking about it right now. It's like, it's so simple. Why can't we just do it all the time? And then there's all the programming and the things that just hold us back. So what is it that you do that helps you express yourself more authentically, more often?
Oh, that also is an easy answer. It's practice. And what I mean by that is I take the time regularly to meditate and spend time with myself. And what I mean by that is going in and just silence. It doesn't have to be anything huge, just quiet meditation or reflection. I love taking off my shoes and grounding on Mother Earth and just walking through the forest or sitting in the forest. One of my favorite things to do with my wife is just to sit by the water on a bench with my shoes off and just sit quietly. Her and we could sit for long periods of time and not talk to each other. And to have that silence with yourself is a beautiful doorway into the mysteries of who you are. And as you unlock that, and the more often you open that door and step into that, to the quietness of who you are and the stillness, I think all the answers are there. So I enthusiastically go into the silence as often as I can, even when I'm busy, because in that stillness, I believe everything you need to know is there.
The stillness is a really powerful place to be. I try to get into meditation if I can every day for a period of time. I also try to ground as often as I can on the earth. So I completely understand what you're talking about. And there's definitely a difference in my energy when I do it versus when I don't. And I'm also noticing physical exercise is actually quite helpful as well, because it's that embodiment that then helps us step more into a more authentic version, because there are no distractions. Do you feel connected to that idea too?
Absolutely. I often talk about that the highest form in the universe is love. And a definition of love to me is going to sound crazy, but is efficiency and harmony. So when you're with your partner, for example, or your family or a loved one, your relationship, there is efficiency in that relationship and a harmony that resonates where there's growth, right? And when you yourself are part of that harmony and efficiency, it is the most efficient path of evolution. So when you look at Mother Nature, when you look at a beehive or a pod of whales or any of these creatures on this beautiful earth that work together, there is a harmony and efficiency in all that they do. When you look at the seasons, there is an efficiency and harmony to life through the seasons. And so I believe that the efficiency and harmony is how we evolve as human beings in the most positive way towards love. And so when often people talk about, I'm kind of going on a rant here, so bear with me for a sec, because I love talking about this. When there's so much chaos going on right now, and there's so much negativity, and it's a really loud media of negativity, that's a powerful thing, right? But when I talk about the evolution of the human collective or consciousness, the evolution can only go towards the natural law. We can only go towards harmony and efficiency. We can't go backwards because that isn't a natural law of the universe. Nothing, if you observe, goes backwards. It's always forward moving. So I really believe that all of us together as a collective will naturally evolve to the higher evolution of harmony and efficiency, because that's where love is, and that's the highest vibrational force moving forward. I don't know. Does that answer your question? I kind of went on a rant.
Oh, I love your rant. I want you to rant all you want today. I absolutely love how you're explaining that. And I've never really thought of it this way, because nature doesn't make any mistakes and nature is incredibly efficient. And so we talk about all these quote unquote inefficient things in the human body, like junk DNA and the appendix that we don't know what it's for. And just recently, science is starting to realize that junk DNA is actually DNA that hasn't been activated yet. And I don't want to say too much because I'm not an expert, but there is research right now figuring out what that's all about. And I've recently read that the appendix is actually a very helpful thing in the intestines that keeps the memory of your gut biome or your intestinal biome, so that if it gets wiped, there's a reservoir that can reseed it in your gut. So there isn't any inefficiency in nature. And so if you're talking about that in terms of humanity and their culture, that we are continuously moving towards more efficiency. And if love, in a sense, is being more aligned with that efficiency, then yeah, there's a lot to be optimistic about moving forward. So I really like that reframe of yours and the concept that you're sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the efficiency and harmony quotient to me is both magical and also very scientific, like the sacred geometry mathematics. It's a beautiful thing to me to observe and pull this idea together from, this isn't my idea. It's a culmination of many that I've read about and studied on. And I take it from a perspective of a simple mind. And I like to think that way, keep it really plain and simple to make it effective in my own use and my own expression.
Yeah. Oftentimes the simplest way to explain it or the easiest way to understand it. So that's why it resonates deeply with me. And you also talked a little bit to the idea that we are living in a difficult time right now. If you think about where society is today, what do you think can be done on an individual basis to help shift things towards a more positive outcome?
I'm going to come back and say this again. If you want to say change in the world, go within with each person. And here's what I also believe. I believe that we are very powerful beings and also a very powerful collective. So in the natural order of things, it doesn't take all of us to shift. It will only take a small number of us to shift. So I believe that if there is enough of us that kind of find that place of higher efficiency and harmony, there'll be a slide or a tilt or a swing of the pendulum to where we all go that way. So I really believe in the power of one. And so if you as a solo individual want to see that change happening, just start with you, be kind. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to everybody. Speak kindly to yourself. Speak kindly to everybody. That's the beginning right there. That's how we do it, and that's how you do it as an individual. You're not going to be able to stop these politicians from doing their craziness. You're not going to be able to stop the corporations from doing their greediness. You have very little effect on that, but you have the hugest effect on yourself. And when we as a collective begin to understand that, and we begin to think about where we're coming from and how we're acting and our role in this experience and in this collective, we will understand our true power and where it lies. And so I continue as myself just to work on me. And what I'm finding is I'm seeing the effect that I have. I'm seeing what happens in my circle. And as that circle spreads out, it begins to affect more. And if more of us understand that and do that, I see big change happening. And I really believe that that is happening. I think there's a small number of people that are doing these things to make these changes and that are going within. And we don't see the effect yet, but I think it's coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really resonates with me, the changing yourself to change the world metaphor. And somebody said, if you change yourself and the 5 people closest to you, that's how you can have the biggest impact. It's not about influencing the entire world. It's just about showing up the way you want everybody else to show up around you. I mean, how do you feel if we show up in a way that it makes us feel good? And then we show up to other people that it makes them feel good, then we all start feeling good. And if we all feel good, we're automatically taking different actions and we can have an influence on different outcomes. And one of the things that I heard too is that, and again, there's different numbers floating around and who knows who made them up, but I like the idea of if 10% of the population shift to a more positive state, the 90% will follow because they can see enough evidence that it exists. And they're like, wait a second, it doesn't have to be as hard as I thought, as I was told, as I was programmed it needs to be. It can actually be easier. Let me figure out how they did it. And then all of a sudden, huge change is going to start happening. So I like that idea of 10%, which actually doesn't sound like very much. So if we all do that, and if it's just 10%, then it could possibly happen pretty quickly, that positive change happens. And again, coming back to kindness, how can we be kind to ourselves, to each other, to our environment, to the animals, to everything?
I find when I practice kindness to myself, I find compassion for myself. Mm-hmm. And when I find compassion for myself, I'm able to be kind through others because of that compassion. Mm-hmm. And I guess you can almost say I've been really leaning heavily in towards more of the Buddhist beliefs in a way, or the Zen, but I'm finding such truth in that. I think there is a thread of truth through all religion. There is a thread of truth through all science. There is a thread of truth through all philosophy. And I think each one of us find all of our paths, which are very individualistic, through tying these different strings of truth together, which creates a very unique experience to each individual as we move through it. I really believe more than anything, just that form of self-love is the greatest love that you can express.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's the foundation of everything. If we can love ourselves, then we can love others. And yeah, we can only love others to the degree that we can love ourselves. I agree with you.
Absolutely.
It's the foundation of everything. And it's also the hardest because the way we talk to ourselves, my goodness, we would never say this to our best friends. But here we are saying these things to ourselves. And I catch myself all the time. I'm like, wow, I would definitely not say this to my best friend ever. And how can I become my own best friend and love myself so deeply that I can then start using that as the foundation to love others? So when you think back about who you were before you had those experiences and who you are today, what do you think has changed?
Absence of fear. You know, through this practice of finding my true expression, the fear that I had when I was younger was based all off of these limiting beliefs and the idea of what could go wrong. And the reason that I was so afraid of what could go wrong is because I didn't know myself. And now I'm not there yet, but as I practice and I get to know myself more and better and deeper, I've learned that whatever goes wrong, I'm going to be able to deal with it because I can deal with it. I will find a way. The confidence is there that I can find a way through love, compassion, appreciation for others. You know, we're all in this together, truly. So if I can find a way through this, which I know I can on anything, that fear is no longer existent. And as that batch of fear within me grows smaller and smaller through practice, it rears its ugly head on occasion because, you know, I'm only human, but the practice of my awareness of self, the greatest thing that has happened is the fading away of fear. I am fearless. Like nothing, I'm not afraid of any man. I'm not afraid of anything that happens. I believe that everything happens for a reason, that the universe is this beautiful story that has been written out. And we are part of that story and we are part of writing that story. I love that I am fearless and it's simply a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice. Yeah, I can so powerfully relate to that. I was sitting in meditation this morning. A friend and we decided to start meditating at 7 a.m. together and send love to each other as we're doing that, just to not be doing it alone. And this morning I was meditating and I felt so much anxiety and fear in the beginning. I felt these cortisol spikes, and then I just got into the fear, and all of a sudden my mind kicked in. I got kicked out of meditation, and I replayed all the possible future scenarios that everything could go wrong. I was like, wow. So I stepped out, became the observer. I was like, okay, how do we find back to love? And so it's like the opposite of fear is almost love. It's like when you can start filling yourself with that love again, then you can almost dilute the fear in the body. So that's what I started doing. I started feeling my love. I started sending love to my friend. I started feeling her love inside of me. And it slowly, like fog, just started falling away.
That's really beautiful. I love that. That's what I call the practice. It's an actionable thing that you do to get into a better place. And I think that's where a lot of people, they think it's too big of a bridge to cross sometimes. And it's not. It's a little action. It's one little step of a conversation with yourself to take that one step. And that one step turns into many. And it's the practice. It's the simple act of the practice that gets you there.
Yeah. And it's just the practice. And we're all human and we're flawed. And so just accepting that this stuff is coming up and that we have some tools that we can start seeing if we can more often come back to that higher frequency of love versus fear. What other practices do you have that help you get into that state?
I have a daily practice that I do. At least I'm pretty consistent at it. I love watching the sun go down. And when the sun go down, I look right into it. And there's something really powerful about that. I love looking at the moon as often as it shows itself. There's something about the light of the moon that I think is really magical. And during that time, I do a very quick meditative practice. And it's simply this. It's about 9 minutes long. I do about 3 minutes of just breath work, whether it's deep breathing or shallow breathing, square breathing. You can look these things up for anybody that's interested in it, but there's many ways of breathing, but I'm always experimenting and playing and developing my own. I'm very playful with my breath work. And I'll do about 3 minutes of that. And then I do 3 minutes of gratefulness. And it's gratefulness for the people in my life. And so I'll just go through either the day's event and I'll be grateful for those people that were involved with the day, or I'm really just grateful for my wife and everything that she does with me and for me, or, my coworkers and my family. It's very repetitive but I definitely go through a 3-minute ritual of gratefulness and gratitude. And then I finish it with a 3 minutes of kind of manifestation. And it's basically, I just get to dream big. And I will tell you, I dream really big. So I do 3 minutes of things I would like to happen in my life, things where I'd like to see myself, those kind of things. And I'm like a little kid with that, just playing. And then I finish it with the idea of, yep, then this is the way it is. Or as they say, so it is, you know what I mean? Or so it be, that kind of thing I finish it off with. And I do that very regularly. And the more I do that, what I've learned is that I'm getting a lot of direction, meaning that my internal compass is becoming very instinctual, or where I need to be and what I need to be doing without me even trying. And now I understand what they mean by just get out of the way. When you're out of your own way, the universe conspires to work for you. And as I practice that and I understand that, I let go of a lot. I let go of control. I let go of what I think should be. I let go of controlling others. I let go of my own anxieties and angers and emotions that are negative. I let go of those. And the more I let go, the more I find that everything just happens for me. And I understand what they mean by this is a video game. This is a simulation. And if you understand to play the game, you can do it all and have it all, experience it all. Like whatever you desire in your life to be, you can write that story. And so I get closer and closer to that. And it's really exciting to me.
Yeah, I love that. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about that, how once we get into that present moment, how we get into the operating system, we get to, he actually calls it electromagnetic. So in our brain is how electricity, the synapses, they create electricity and they communicate with each other and release chemicals in the body that then create feelings in the body. And then the feelings start attracting things. So we have to have an intention, and then we need to have that thought, which allows the chemicals to release so we can start feeling it, and then we can start attracting it. So when we still our mind is what he says, and we go into the field of consciousness, into the operating system, and then we get crystal clear as to what we want to manifest, then we get to actually play in the simulation, in the big video game of life, and we actually have control. Because he says we're always manifesting, we're just default manifesting. And so if we get to change from default manifesting, which means we react to something that happens in the world, and then we feel bad, and now the brain releases fear chemicals, which makes us feel afraid in our body, we're attracting that. So if we can become more conscious and do more meditation and have the types of big dreams like you're talking about. And I mean, look at what you did with your hostel and now with your pizza place. These are big things. And against all odds, or maybe because of all the odds and your intention, you were able to create that. And that's why I'm so excited to have you on this show, because you're such a beautiful example of an incredibly powerful manifester, and you're just practicing continuously, and that goes to show. Just like working out, if you only lift weights once, you don't really see anything, but if you lift it for consistently for a year, you start seeing your body change. So it's the same thing with life.
I love that you brought up Joe Dispenza. You're absolutely right. And it just dawned on me that my practice, right, that I spoke of earlier, is that my breath work centers me in my body physically, right? And then my gratitude brings the emotion up. And then my thought process lights up my brain and connects the two. So when you have that emotion and idea together, that's the key to the manifestation, being grounded in the emotion of love, and then the bringing it from the mind and connecting the two together, the heart and the mind. That's the coherence that he talks about, right? In making that happen. And that is a really powerful tool. And then as I talk about that inner compass, right, I feel like my practice has been really good from this kind of internal, physical, and spiritual and mental. But now I find myself being called to what we talked about, the physical, the movement, right? The physical body. And I really believe that we are a trinity, and that if you're vibrating in a mental state and a spiritual state, you're only going to go so high without calibrating the body too.
Yeah.
So you need to be tied in together with all three in order to reach the highest vibration. So my health isn't the best because I'm overweight. I eat a lot of junk food, but I'm being very strongly called by that compass, or realigned by my internal compass, to be like, it's time to change the physical now too, because that's a big part of who you are. And I'm following this natural movement towards that. And I'm already feeling the effects of it in a short little bit of doing that.
Yeah. And that makes so much sense. And it's what I keep hearing across the board. When I was first going to do the Wake Up Protocol, it was going to be a book. And I did 20 interviews back in 2019. And one of the questions I asked people was, and what has changed in your life in regards to the food you eat, the things you drink, exercise, relationships with people, and nature? And so you've pretty much checked everything at this point. Your relationship with people, you're more kind to them. Your relationship to your body, you're realizing you need to change your diet to really have the vessel that can carry that soul and that higher vibration to really get to that point. And body, exercise, food, people, and then nature. You talked about nature, grounding, looking at the sunset, and then bringing in that gratitude. So that's what I hear across the board when people wake up, whatever that means, when they've had these awakening moments in their lives. These are the things that start to change. And God, is it beautiful when that happens, because all of a sudden you see the soul of somebody shining through their eyes. You see so much more lightness. You see so much more potential. And all of a sudden things just lighten up and they really embody love.
I can say this as your friend, watching you over the years transform, and the way that you express yourself is so magical now. You began your search back when we first met, and as you really move forward, I admire you so much for how far you've come and what you're doing and the effect that you're having and the resonance of your podcast. And you're a completely different person now, right? It's one of the most beautiful things to watch somebody blossom from the chrysalis to the butterfly. And that's so beautiful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And yet I'm such a work in progress too. I'm so flawed in so many ways. And yet I'm also able to step into these moments more often, which is beautiful and feels great. And the relationships I have with other people have just expanded so much. And as a Libra, I have so many planets in the sign of Libra. For me, relationships are core to life, and even having this podcast and the gift of having these deep conversations with amazing humans like you is just such a blessing. I'm glad I had the courage to take off the mask, because it feels so much lighter. That mask was heavy. It was really weighing me down. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does take courage. There's a lot of fear out there. It really is simply a choice, but that choice is such a difficult one to take off the mask, right? To try to live authentically with intention is not an easy thing to do, because you've built such a story up, right? But it's really just like what you said, defragging your mind and your soul and resetting what that program is.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, the longer I have these conversations, the more I'm starting to believe that we are just a simulation. It's really interesting, because I'm starting to realize just how much control we have over this. And it just is beginning to feel like a program. And I find it fascinating. And I'm so glad I'm still in the game. And I'm enjoying it, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I'll tell you, since I kind of gamified everything I'm doing, I am having so much freaking fun. And as I experiment with this whole reprogramming the simulation, oh man, wait till you see what I do. I can't wait to show you what I've got coming.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be amazing. And I want to give our listeners a chance to find you too. Where would they go to find you?
I think the simplest way is just my Instagram. It's at MOTO Pizza Shop. I'm the only one who answers it. I'm the only one who does it. I do my own social media. And a lot of my stuff that goes out there, there's a YouTube that has like over 3 million views from an interview with me. And everybody just goes through my Instagram channel. I answer everybody, or at least try to. Yeah, I really like that form of communication. I love that platform. I love social media. I think it's a really powerful tool to spread the idea of love and hope and share on these platforms. Even with how loud the negative can be, I think there's some really powerful, positive things happening there. So yeah, at MOTO Pizza Shop is how you can get me.
Great. And I'll make sure to put the links in the show notes. And just
Thank you.
And just as you're saying how loud the negative is, we're programmed to hear more of the things that create fear, because if we're in danger, we need to protect ourselves, versus the things that are based on love, they just don't quite land as loud. And so we might need more of the love messages than the fear messages to really drown out the fear. And so it's lovely what you're putting on your social media, and keep doing what you're doing. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Nadja. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So before we end, I would like to ask you one final question. If you could go back in time and give a message to a younger version of you, what would you tell him?
That's a great question. Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
That's powerful. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. I don't think we need any more explanations. What a pleasure to have had this conversation. I know we've gone there before, and I knew it was going to be very, very deep and interesting. Thanks for sharing your insights, how you're doing the manifestation, how you're living by example. I just appreciate you so much. Thank you, Lee, for coming on this show.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure was mine. And having this conversation has really moved me. So thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Wake Up Protocol. If you like what you heard, share this episode with 3 people who need to hear this message. And if you want to go deeper, head to thewakeupprotocol.com and sign up for our email list. That's where we share behind the scenes insights, bonus resources, exclusive invites, and the kind of guidance we only send to our community. And if this is the last thing you hear from us, all we'd like to say is keep going, trust yourself, follow your heart. Until next time, have a safe and happy journey.